Well, happy Leap Day, everybody. My name is Timothy. I'm a digital marketing success manager here at Sierra. We are joined by Colum Malcolmson of the Malcolmson Real Estate Group. And today we're going to answer a few questions that were asked in our Sierra Interactive Mastermind group on Facebook about experience with paid leads. Colum has a bit of experience in this area. I'm going to dive into that, some of these common questions that you have, and talk about how to maximize your paid lead generation efforts in 2024, specifically with PPC. A bit about me, for those of you who aren't familiar, I have about a decade and a half of real estate marketing experience. I started in the business as an auction runner. I'd come from the entertainment world. I quickly was able to transition to a marketing role because I was studying to be a realtor at the time. And I discovered that there were some things that I would be able to do from a marketing, brand building type of perspective that being a real estate practitioner would kind of get in the way of. So started off with a mid-sized brokerage in California, about 200 agents there. Moved to the East Coast. I was selling out-of-home advertising at the time in the New York area and was working with a lot of clients that were in the real estate business. So that expanded from the brokerage to the teams to the developers that were quickly building up a lot of the waterfront real estate in the area. Prior to joining Sierra, I was with Homes.com as in the SEO sales world, and gave a lot of webinars at that point. So here we are today. Colum, how did you get into the real estate business?
Yeah. So I started in 2013, September of 2013, while I was still in school. I was, attending Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. And to be honest, I, needed means to an end, right? A way to get ahead. So I decided I'd get my real estate license and began as an apartment locator and focused on that for 2.5 years, give or take. And after I graduated from school in 2015, I jumped in full throttle, right? I pivoted from apartment locating to residential, was with KW for a number of years and pivoted to a different brokerage that I am with now. Been with them for about 2.5 years EXP. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
It's awesome. So you've seen a definite transition from the post real estate bubble burst to where we are today. So, uh, given that there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, uh, to what extent, to what extent have your systems supported your business to this point?
Uh, they've to summarize, they've supported my business tremendously. To give you a little bit of context on that, so we have been going through a little bit of a wonky market over the past few years, right? From being in a market where we had the lowest interest rates we had ever seen in mortgage history, right? And just one of the largest soars I had ever seen, to now being in a situation where people feel like interest rates are high. And yes, compared to what they were a few years ago, they are, but historically speaking, not quite, right? There's definitely a little bit of uncertainty that I've seen in the market. Of course, with it being an election year and so forth as well, it also creates a little bit of extra uncertainty for people. But it's been a situation where, despite the uncertainty, everybody needs a place to live. People still work, they still move, they change jobs, they move closer to family, they move to different areas for a variety of different reasons. And it's just created additional opportunities for me to connect with more people who are potentially aligned with those purposes, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's we're going to really dive into that building of rapport and connection that needs to take place. So, uh, we have a number of questions that we're gonna go through. One, I just wanted to kind of get out of the way right off the bat. Someone wrote in asking that a representative from Google told them that their campaigns were in need of optimization, and we get this email ever so often. Clients typically asking, "I thought you guys were managing our campaigns. Google says you're only 44% optimized. What's going on over here?" And I first want to just assure everybody that your campaigns are under active management by our ads teams. Uh, to give some greater context, Google hires call center companies throughout the world to call on accounts to encourage people to perform actions that first and foremost benefit Google's bottom line or are aligned with Google's practices. Uh, these teams are outfitted with were issued Google email addresses, so they appear to come from Google. So the perception is that this person is coming from Google, they have a certain level of expertise, and my ads manager isn't doing that. Now, there's any number of views on this, all the way up to, because of the advent of AI in the ads world, that this is a way to encourage people to lean less on individual expertise and more so on the AI that's involved. And we will talk about AI and some of the opportunities there a little bit later in this discussion. But I did want to point that out because it is very likely, whether you have ads managed through us, a third party, or yourself, you may get an email from time to time from Google, someone from Meta, a Meta marketing pro, perhaps somebody from Microsoft. Every seems like every network is doing this now, encouraging you to book a call, take advantage of some sort of optimizations. In the vast majority of cases, it has very little to no real impact on your ads or its performance. Colum, you've been with us, for some time. What's your experience been like?
I jumped on board with Sierra in, I believe it was August of 2022. Um, and it took me a few weeks to kind of learn the ropes and get fully acquainted with the system and how everything clicks, right? But um, personally, I love it. It's a system that is robust in the sense that you can really dig into the creative element to build things out the way you want them to function, while at the same time making it user friendly, right? Or as user friendly as it could be, right? It's helped me build out a lot of processes with email drip marketing campaigns, action plans, and setting up a variety of integrations that just help things flow a lot more seamlessly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think when we're talking about systems and we'll dive into your process a little bit. Just want to get an idea of the results. Everyone adopts systems for results. Since starting with Sierra and working with our ads teams, what's been your experience like? Do you have any specific numbers that'd be willing to share?
Yeah. So currently I'm generating close to about 25 leads per day from a variety of different sources, not just PPC. PPC makes up roughly about 40%, social media 50, and then 10% of that is organic through SEO. And I recently ramped up my volume because I'm testing a few different AI processes, conversational AI, in order to improve our overall process, right? And even though that conversion has gone down slightly, it has helped us streamline those processes a whole lot better, right? But you know, I believe I began doing PPC about a month after I had onboarded, and started receiving results from it pretty much immediately. Um, in a lot of instances, people are, or at least in my experience, people are in the information gathering stage. So they're just looking, they're, just contemplating things. Maybe they're thinking 6 months or a year or a few years down the line. But there are people who are looking to do something earlier, right? There are people who are ready who, maybe first time home buyers and they have a lease that is going to be up in the next few months and they're first time home buyers and they're wanting to buy a house. And I come across those situations quite often. Um, I think the key behind everything is finding a good way to connect with people, right? And I have found that the best way, yeah, I have processes and I have structure and you know, but taking at the same time as having all of that, it's also uh, about just having a little bit more of a holistic approach, where it's more about authenticity and providing value. I bring a lot of value to the table in the sense that I know my market very well. I've been producing real estate at a high level for a number of years, and really listening and asking good questions is what it's boiled down to.
Absolutely. So that leads to our next question, and someone's asking about in the time frame to expect to generate and convert leads. So speaking from the lead generation side, now, for clients that launch with Sierra, the lead generation happens nearly immediately. Within 24 to 48 hours, in most cases, you're starting to see leads trickle into your CRM. And the reason for that is we're targeting the most popular and the highest, some of the highest value keywords, the most direct thoughts that people have in terms of their housing situation. So if I'm looking for a new home and I'm thinking, what does the housing market look like in Myrtle Beach or in Houston or in Edmonton? And I'm typing in a phrase that specific of houses for sale in Edmonton, condos for sale in Myrtle Beach, that that thought translated into a search means that I've considered it and that intent is there out the gate. So once somebody, then they see a set of search results and you're picking generally from the top three, uh, mostly because people bias towards what's at the top. Once you've clicked on one of those three, you're presented with the landing page, and provided that the landing page matches the expectations you had at search, you're very likely to continue on to the next phase, which is to evaluate what you're seeing and click on something that you like. And because we require people to register from the get-go, that conversion from thought to I want to see more information, you're preventing me from seeing some of this information. I'm just going to give you some, I'm going to give you my name, email, phone number combo and gain access to this. That's the win. That's our service in a nutshell. We're driving people to give you the bare minimum data that you need to start to build that relationship, to convert somebody from a stranger who has in this whole process takes, you run searches like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, not a lot of thinking involved, not a lot of processing. I don't even remember the name of the person of the website in many cases that I registered on because it goes past my short-term memory straight into my long-term memory. I remember I may have run some searches, but I don't remember all the details. But I gave you my information, and provided you have a system in place to follow up with them, that's going to keep me top of mind. That's going to allow you to get me to think about, hey, maybe I should learn some more about this person or read some reviews, or they have a newsletter. Maybe I'll open it, or they have some information on a blog post about the community I'm searching in, and start to become familiar, and then eventually catch me at that right moment to where I'm willing to entertain a conversation, talk about moving forward. Up until this point, it's not about you. It's largely a self-serve process. And I think that mindset and that expectation should be very clear. It's largely self-serve. The information that we're providing is largely available everywhere online from your direct competitors, but mostly from home search portals, which from a PPC perspective, that's your real competition. There are 3 to 4 major home search portals that take the vast majority that use PPC to power their business models, either from a value add model where they're taking a lead, sound familiar, capturing a lead, nurturing it, and then selling it at a higher markup, or arbitraging the traffic, buying traffic very cheap, directing it to a page to generate impressions. So that, hey, you're what you would normally get maybe a few hundred visitors, now you're getting tens of thousands of visitors. Those two models are what you're competing against. But just because it's that pervasive, you're never going to get 100% of the pie, no matter how deep your pockets are. So it's about lead flow relative to your business. So when thinking about planning your lead flow, what do you think about in terms of do you think about team? Do you think about your own personal capacity? What are those factors when it comes to planning out your lead flow?
Are you asking
Yeah,
me?
to you, Colum.
Great, great. Thank you for clarifying. First off, I'd like to start off by saying that depending on the source of the lead, the result and the time lapse is going to be different, right? In my personal experience or from what I've seen, SEO is usually what typically converts at the highest rate. However, followed directly past that is PPC, which gets you essentially indexed within the quickest amount of time. Part of the challenge with SEO is the time frame in order to establish that credibility with Google in order for you to be indexed towards the top, right? But and lastly, social media. I'd say social media is the one that has the most delayed conversion and the smallest conversion number or conversion rate out of the three. And I suppose it also a lot has to do with the consumer behavior, right? So when someone is coming through as organic traffic from SEO, right? It is they were jumping on to your site and they were reading an article relevant to information that they were curious about. If they proceeded to register on your site is because they read that article and then redirected and started looking at properties on your site, wanted to continue looking, therefore registered, right? So if they're at a point where they are specifically researching a certain area or neighborhood, that means that they've already done some diligence and they have honed in on a particular area that's of interest to them. With PPC, it's very similar in the sense that it's a proactive approach, right? They literally go to google.com, they're typing keywords in, you're popping up, they're clicking on the site, they're looking at pictures, they're looking at listings in the area, and they want to continue looking, therefore they share the information, right? With Facebook, I believe that part of the reason why they are at a lower conversion rate is because it's a reactive lead generation opposed to a proactive lead generation, right? People are on Facebook scrolling, looking at pictures of puppies, and then they come across an ad and they click on it, So and bridging that gap can be a little bit of the challenge, right? From lead, how do you get that lead to go from a cold lead who just registered and you don't know them, they don't know you, to go through, vet them, and determine if it's somebody who you can help now or help later on down the road. And there's a lot of things that we want to do along the way in order to help accomplish that goal. And I think what it really boils down to above all else is In a lot of instances when you're communicating with these people, or at least I have seen that I get a lot of pushback up front with, oh, we're just looking, or, we're really not interested. And the reality of it is, even though they say that, they don't necessarily mean that. And what I mean by that is, they don't know you. They had a reason for registering in the first place. They jumped on Google, they typed out keywords, they clicked on your site, they looked at pictures, they filled out their information so they could continue looking at pictures. Now, if they say, I don't know, or I was just browsing, or I'm just curious, not interested, it's not because they're not. It's because they don't know who you are, therefore they don't know whether they can trust you or not. So part of our job in the process is to communicate with them in a way in which we can, demonstrate uh, demonstrate that we are capable, that we are knowledgeable, and that we are true fiduciaries. And I think that really comes a lot from the perception that we are not here to make a sale. I don't look at my real estate business as I'm here to make money. Yeah, that's a byproduct of my efforts, right? But the reality of it is that I'm here to help people. I'm here to serve. And coming from a place of contribution has helped me align myself a lot with easing that transition in order to help develop and build trust with my clients, right? Now there's a variety of things aside from taking that holistic personal approach that you can do, such as, having your action plans lined up in a certain way where you're sending out text messages with good questions. Um, that there's integrations that I think are really important to touch on, that really make a huge impact in the long run. In fact, I want to share about this specifically because it's something that so many people in this realm, in this space, because this is a really powerful business model in itself. It's some of the largest teams and the majority of the largest brokerages throughout the nation utilize this as one of their backbones, for their revenue flow, right? So in itself, the model is really powerful, but there's a lot of little details in here that I've found that a lot of people don't talk about, that make things click at a far greater level. And what I'm referring to on this one, Tim, is the email screener integration. Having an email screening integration set with the CRM is critical. I had never heard that from anybody else, but in my research and as I was learning and building this out, because I had dabbled with PPC and all of this years ago with different CRMs, but back in August of 22 was when I really jumped in full throttle, and I decided, you know what, this is going to be a model I really want to dedicate time and energy to learn how to do right. And I discovered through it all that the majority of the emails that I was sending through the automated e-alerts were not being received. And I'm certain that there's a number of people on this call that are experiencing something like that, where they're not having that deliverability, where the e-alerts show to be going out on their end, but the consumer, the client, isn't receiving it, or it's going into their spam folder. And that's because they don't have that screener set up.
And by screener, you're referring to the SendGrid integration. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm referring to the SendGrid integration. So I hadn't set that up for a few months from when I began. And I kept, when I was reconnecting with people, they wouldn't really remember. In some instances, they wouldn't recall our last conversation, or they wouldn't remember me. And I'd ask, hey, have you been receiving the emails that I've been sending you with properties in such an area? And they'd say no. And in some instances, I ask them, hey, check your spam. Maybe it's there. And sure enough, it was in their spam folder. If you are sending out those alerts through your regular email rather than doing it through the SendGrid screener, it's going to be going into people's spam folder, and I mean, when you're really running volume, it's 100%. I mean, it costs maybe, I think it's like 95, $96 to set up, to set up that monthly, right? But for me, for example, I'm generating so many leads, and we are doing alerts that are being set up on autopilot, uh, and those emails are being sent out and delivered with an extremely high deliverability rate. And ever since we've made that integration, it really pivoted things for me where people were recalling my name when I would call them back to say hello, right? When I was reconnecting with people a few weeks or a few months down the line, they've been receiving my emails, right? So that it already established some of that connection, right? It helped bridge that gap. And just to give you a little bit of context on that, with that SendGrid integration, I'm sending out about 11, close to about 1,100, 1,100 emails per day. So that amounts to about 33,000 emails a month, and that is solely alerts to the database.
That's a lot of email addresses. 33,000 email note every month. So, at tack on an extra zero, that's quite a bit over the course of a year. And since you continue to add context into your CRM, presumably that number is going to scale algorithmically over time. You're going to have more and more emails going out. So I'm glad you touched on the importance of deliverability. There's just a little bit of a mindset shift that I think, and please feel free to disagree, that there is a mindset shift that needs to happen in that we have to earn, as a marketer, you have to earn the trust of the consumer. You have to earn the trust of the lead. It's not a foregone conclusion because you paid for that lead that that person's business belongs to you. And now more than ever, because so many abuses have taken place through marketing platforms, you have things like application to person verification that's happening on the phone side, on the Twilio side. You have in Google Ads, Microsoft, Facebook, the verification of the entire ecosystem. So ID verification becoming important to take this person's ad campaign associated with this business, because of all of these changes that are happening, adding these little things that maybe weren't thought of before, like, are my emails getting delivered, especially once you start automating the process. I think that's a really important thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. Awesome. So let's talk a little about how did you go about building out your conversion process? Did you get something off the shelf? What was your approach towards that?
That's a can of worms. Um, uh, it required a little bit of creative flow on my end. I built mine out from scratch, right? So I did model a few principles and a few other scripts, if you will, along the way, right? But I also put together a variety of questions, right? Asking powerful questions, and asking questions that prompt a little bit more of a response, and sometimes questions that give you multiple answers, right? That way, when they do respond, depending on that response, it gives you a much clearer idea as to what things look like, right? So what I mean by that is, so of course, speed to lead is always a must. If you're not connecting with those people within a timely manner from when they register, it's going to be a lot more challenging for you to connect, because in that moment, within the first few minutes from when they register, they're in that headspace. So if you connect with them over the phone while they're still in that headspace, it's going to allow you to just have have a little bit of a better conversation rather than if you call them 2, 3 days later, right? After they've gone through that whole thought process and maybe reached a different conclusion of maybe, oh, I think it's too early. Maybe we'll be thinking about doing something 6 months down the line. So speed to lead is super important. I'm really intentional, right? I was since I've pivoted over to an AI process, and we can dig into that if you'd like as well. But what I was doing is, speed to lead, connecting with them within the first few minutes, and they'd receive a total of 3 phone calls. Each lead would receive a total of 3 phone calls within the first 2 days that they registered on the site. One within the first few minutes, another one either in the morning or in the evening, depending on when they registered, right? Because sometimes people register overnight. So, and you're not going to call somebody at 3 in the morning, right? Um, but being really intentional with the upfront conversations, but coupling that aside from the attempts to connect with them over the phone, there's the automations, the action plans, right? And one of my favorite intros is, hey, such and such, this is Colum, realtor here in Central Texas, with the Malcolmson Real Estate Group. I noticed that you jumped onto my site via Google to take a look at properties in the area. Just curious, are you thinking about buying a home, or are you just browsing? Most people say they're just browsing. We know that's not true, right? There is a little bit of intentionality despite that response. And it's about following that through with an additional question that is one of my favorites is, would this be your first time buying a home, or have you purchased a home before?
Mm.
Right? And that's been one of my favorite questions for years, and you can apply it across all markets. It's totally relevant in all markets. But it's one of those questions that depending on their answer, it can give you a whole lot of context. If they say they're first time home buyers, that they don't have experience with buying or selling homes. That they're most likely going to be doing financing on the purchase, right? And they might be in a situation where they barely have enough for the down payment, or they don't, right? If it's the case that they answer yes, we have bought and sold homes before, it might be someone who already owns a home, right? That currently is living in a home that they own. They might need to be selling this home. They might be in your area. They might be in a different part of the country. Um, which also translates to, depending on how long they've owned that home, they might have a substantial amount of equity. And in a lot of instances, people like utilizing that equity for their down payment and putting a large portion down towards their next home. Why are you just curious? Why were you looking in this area? What intrigued you about wanting to look at properties in this area? Where are you coming from? And just asking some of those key questions can give you a lot of context. Um, uh, shifting gears just for a brief moment, I am also a big believer of having a really good presence online. And usually the easiest and best way to do that is just having a Google My Business profile, and having racking up reviews, and of course positive reviews is what you're striving for.
Yes.
But that way, you can use that as a soundboard, where you can I share my Google profile with people, who I'm just connecting with, and I'm very transparent in the sense that I tell them, hey, I'm rated as a top rated agent in the area, and I've built a pretty good reputation in this area by doing right by other people, and I'd love the opportunity to do that for you too, right? And rather than coming from a point of selling, it's just, you know, communicating to them that yes, you share that profile, and in a lot of instances, they look at it and they realize, oh yeah, he does kind of know what he's talking about.
Yeah, what I'm hearing here is something that I've heard described by a sales trainer that I follow, Josh Braun, as you're helping them drop that zone of resistance. Just operating under the premise that everybody that comes into your store or your office, which is your website essentially, is there for a reason, that they have some sort of intent, whether they either know that they can, or that they're even if they're very, very much ready to transact right away or at some point in the future, they come in with the idea that every person that comes in your door is ready to buy or at some point will buy, and they'll buy from you. But everybody comes in with sales resistance because, you go into a store and the number one lie in a store is, I'm just looking. I'm okay. I'm just looking. I don't need any help. You might need a ton of help, but people don't like to be sold in the vast majority of instances. So asking these are some great questions that you're asking. Is this your first time buying a house? Have you bought and sold? Have you bought before? Are you a first time home? Would you be a first time home seller? This is all part of, the data gathering aspect of lead generation. There are some schools of thought, which I do not subscribe to, that a person should seek to gather as much information upfront as possible about that content, about that individual, in order to share information with them, because that produces a better quality lead. What that generally produces is somebody that is okay with filling out a long contact form, but for the vast majority of people, because again, this information is widely available, it turns away people. It turns away people when you're not leading with value, you're leading with, you are I need to decide whether I want to work with you or not. All of that's going to come out in the wash. All of that's going to come out with some simple validation efforts. Sending a text message as your first step, as part of any action, any action plan, uh, validates the phone number as a working phone number. It also validates whether it's a mobile phone number, which you then can proceed with future text messages. Uh, it is a process, and I love hearing that your first your you know your first mentality, first and foremost, is to help people and be of service and demonstrate that through a source of proof, a source of truth, like Google. A Google business profile does a lot for people, and if anything, just makes it a real easy place for people to do that second step of research, going from that stranger step to the familiar step. Hey, I've gotten 3 text messages or emails from Colum. Who is this guy? Okay, let me look him up. Where's his realtor.com profile? Okay, he's got some great reviews on Google. All right, the next time this guy calls, I might be more inclined to engage in a longer conversation. We, just as a department, get a common concern that leads are coming in with bad phone numbers. And I think a lot of times when you're in an industry, you become blind to how everyone perceives an industry. And anybody that's not in the real estate business knows that if you go to Zillow and you give them a phone number, or you sign up on a realtor's website, they're going to use it. You're going to get text messages, you're going to get phone calls. And if you're haphazardly doing the search on a number of different sites on a self-service basis, you're getting a lot of phone calls and emails and text messages about real estate in not always all opportune times and without much value. So I think, especially with inventory levels low, I suspect that emails are probably still fairly high. But I think people, if they give you a bad phone number and email, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. I think that just tells you that for that individual, you have to earn that additional piece of contact information. You have to provide value in that email so that that person comes back to you and says, okay, I'm willing to give you my correct phone number or reach
And
out to you.
Tim, if I may interject on that just a little bit, you know, don't 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 focus. Well, something that I remind myself of is to not focus on the problems, focus on the solutions. And if someone, put a bad email down or a bad phone number and you don't connect with that person, that's okay. But don't not letting that reaching a point of frustration uh, is important, because we have to take a little bit of a step back, and we need to take a little bit of a better look at the bigger picture. Uh, and the reality is that the conversion rate of online lead, and this is just the nature of this space, the conversion rate for online lead generation is low. That's just the reality of it.
Shockingly low. So just to
It's
put it into
low.
context, it's an average of 1 to 3%
That's
of
right.
leads converted, and then 1% conversion to close. In the vast majority of cases, harmonized across a number of different markets, the expectations are low. So it is to some extent a large numbers problem. It is having that expectation that a lead is going to take 12 to 18 months before they are in a place from familiarity to ready to work to ready to in that go forward space with you. You may, like Colum said, get some people that are ready to transact right away or within a shorter period of time. But having that correct mindset of like, it's just an opportunity, and you have to keep your process keeps you going. Even when the motivation isn't there, the process keeps you going.
And to add that to that once more, the solution in that, so you're not getting frustrated with those bad numbers, is volume. Yes, you do have to have a process, you do have to have a conversion, process in place in order to increase your overall percentage of conversion, right? From lead to closing. But having that is critical. I mean, we've got to look at, let's just dig into numbers for a second. Let's
Mhm.
just dig into the numbers for a second, because it's important. And volume is a really big component that a lot of people don't contemplate. I'm currently pumping out close to about 750 leads a month, and a lot of times the question that I get from people when they hear that is, how the heck are you handling all of that? Well, yeah, I've got some AI processes that are helping me go through and scrub all of that for the appointments, but you got to run volume. And in fact, since I pivoted and I'm using this AI process, I'm converting at less than 1% right now. And I was converting right at about 1% prior. But it's made my life a million times easier with this, and that's why I decided to make that adjustment. And even if you're converting at 1% and you think that's low, and how the heck am I going to find that 1% person? It's not. It's a larger percentage of people that actually do buy houses. But if you're doing your part, that's what you're going to be converting. That's what you're going to be converting. And but looking at those numbers just for a second, saying hypothetically, you just to understand some simple numbers on it, if you're converting at a standard 1%, so that means that it takes 100 leads in order for you to convert that into one closing, right? And how much does it cost you to generate one lead? Let's say hypothetically it costs you $12, right? Or I'm going to keep the math simple. Let's say it costs $10, right? So in theory, for you to generate one closing, it costs you $1,000,
Yep.
right? So that then the next question that you should be asking is, what's the median price point for homes in my area, and what's the average commission for that, right? So, for example, in my market, the median price is roughly about 350. So at 3% standard commission. So that translates to approximately $10,500. So I'm investing $1,000
Mhm.
towards generating 10,500. So that's a 10.5x return on investment.
Absolutely. And I'd also like to point out that that 1%, that 1% number isn't hard and fast. It isn't fixed. you still have 99 leads in your hopper that whether it converts this year and you count it, you attribute it towards this year's investment in leads, or it converts next year or in the third year. If you have a team and the first person that touches that lead isn't the last person that closes that transaction, it's still, it's still such a compelling lead source. The cost per lead, and which is why it's not outside of budgeting and estimations, isn't really the best source. It really isn't a success metric by any means. That cost per lead, relative to the proceeds is is far and away, there isn't a better spread. I don't think there's a better spread online, because in the consumer products world, if you have $100 product and your cost per lead is $50, getting it down to $45 makes a lot of difference in your margin. But if your outcome is $10,000, your gross proceeds are 10, and if your net proceeds are even like 40% of that on the most standard basic, real estate 101 split, that's still $4,000 to a $10 conversion. I would do that every single day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
And there's also, you know, I feel, and I've been subject to this as well, is looking for solutions to generate business, but also seeking immediate results,
I'm glad you
you know?
mentioned that, because we did have a question about something that we can do outside of the standard campaigns. We get, we start everybody, we start, there's a lot of different options that are available, and there are so many options that, oftentimes people get paralyzed by choice. But depending on your business model, something that could be done, and I'm not sure everybody has, some people have very strong opinions about this. You started off as an apartment locator, you mentioned earlier. Rentals are an important part of the housing market. And in some cases, like in New York, New Jersey, and some other major cities where there's like building incentives to place people. Uh, there are there's a strong there are strong reasons to consider structuring your model to incorporate rental leads into your business. Some of that, and for some of those reasons, are fairly clear. One, the cost per lead is much lower, so the volume that you can generate with a smaller subsection of your budget, is pretty compelling. The second part of that is that person is likely has a more immediate concern. As someone that's searching for renting is probably thinking, I need to move out of this apartment, get out of this lease at this point, and I need something new because the landlord just raised my rent too much and this isn't going to work out. Or I'm moving to a new market and I don't want to necessarily commit to a house. While bringing my family halfway across the country, maybe I'm going to rent for a little while, ease into this environment, get a sense of the lay of the land before I make this type of commitment. So this person is also likely not being helped by one of your compatriots, because people are so narrowly focused on where does somebody sit on the transaction. Are they a buyer? Are they a seller? Are they immediate? Are they down the road? And if they're down the road and not a buyer or a seller, most people avoid them like the plague. So this is a way to get in front of somebody. They're a little bit more urgent on their housing decision. So you collect a lot of information upfront a lot faster. That information gathering process that we were discussing happens a lot faster. Here's my name. Here's my credit score. Here's my employer. This is when I'm moving. This is what I'm looking to get into. This is how much I can afford in rent, which will translate into a mortgage. In some cases, these people don't even know that they could buy if they wanted to. They don't know about all of the different housing programs state by state, or that, there just might be a general belief that I need to have 15, 20% down in order to buy a house, when in reality, FHA will get you at what, 2.5%? So that's a lot easier for someone to swallow, and not everybody thinks that they could qualify. Oh, my credit isn't that great. Well, it doesn't need to be 800 credit. Your home buying programs tiered at different places and different options. And most of these people are thinking that they're renting, and they're renting for life. They're not thinking about, hey, I could be a homeowner at some point. And then you're successful at placing them. In some markets, there's a direct financial incentive. In New York and New Jersey, it's common to get a 1 month broker's fee, paid for by the client. And every market customs are different. Uh, you also know where this person is going to live for the next year, or at least the duration of the lease. You know where they live. You've built a direct relationship with them. You have the ability to send them more information on a more personal level. You did something small for them, or at least you got that first transaction right out of the way. Now you've built a relationship. What are your thoughts on this, Colum? Do you see?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a little bit of an untapped source. And yeah, I usually when I think of a renter lead, it's like great, but that goes back to the same principle of shifting. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change,
Absolutely.
right?
So,
And
yeah,
and even though you might not close a sale on it within a short period of time with a renter lead because they're looking to rent.
mhm,
But if you take the time to help them find a place to rent, you're able to cultivate that relationship with that person at that time. You've already established a certain level of trust, right? Uh, and then help them later on down the road with buying a home.
absolutely. Especially, as I mentioned, if the window of opportunity is 12 to 18 months with the lead, if you can shorten that relationship building aspect and close a rental for them within 3 to 6 months,
Exactly.
they're still on that buyer timeline. And even if you don't ever close this person for a home, because maybe they're a lifetime renter, that's their thing. You've done them a service to where they feel comfortable opening up that sphere of influence. Hey, this guy Colum, nobody was trying to no one wanted to talk to me, but Colum helped me through this situation. I got into this cool apartment. We're looking around at some other places. Oh, you're ready to go. You should use Colum. He's great. Look at his reviews. Go ahead. And that's really that I think there's that disconnect between what happens once that person is a lead, once that person is a client, and what happens after the fact. Because we all know, we've been doing this for enough time to know that clients often take their our clients, realtors take their clients for granted. They believe that I sold you this house, you're gonna contact me immediately when you're thinking about selling this house, and that's not often the case, is it, Colin?
No, not the case at all.
So I know we have a little bit of time left. I did want to talk about you've started off with this manual process that you created from scratch, and then you shifted to an AI driven process. Part of that, is about ingesting as many leads as possible. You're talking about lead volume, and you have the process to do that. Uh, let's hear a little bit about your AI process and
Yeah.
what sources are you using to there?
Well, so, AI is still a little bit of a challenging topic for a lot of people to wrap their head around, and it is in certain capacities, um, for me as well. But I've learned over the years to focus on connecting with people who know things far more than know things better, than I do, and leveraging my relationships, like all of the lead generation that I do with Sierra, you handle a lot of that, right? I so I did partner with a company a few months ago for conversational AI. And of course, there's other ways in which we can use AI in order to analyze data and so forth. But I'm solely utilizing it for the purpose of conversation, and it's primarily over text message and email to connect with the leads, um, in order to siphon through those who are looking to do something immediate or not, because all of those long-term ones, even if it's the case that we don't connect with them immediately right now over the phone and build that rapport, the e-alerts with that really high deliverability help bridge that gap. right? So my focus now has been taking a little bit more of a co-pilot approach and letting the AI do all of the scrubbing, right? And connecting and finding those hand raisers and those who are at a little bit of a higher level of engagement. And then the ultimate goal with it is, to increase our appointments that we have every week, rather than having to go through and actually scrub, like make all of the phone calls. Because when you're doing maybe 5 to 10 leads per month, it's you know it's palatable, it's doable. But once you're doing 25, 30 plus leads a month, it can be really challenging to be having all of those conversations. And you don't want to get burnt out, and it's definitely something that can happen.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we hear a lot of, you hear a lot of the feedback about Facebook. There's a lot of there's a lot of thought leadership that says, well, because Facebook is incidental, it's not as valuable as Google, where there's some intent that was driven, and there's some fair assessment there. It sounds like, though, looking at it from a different lens, you have a process that allows you to automate the follow-up at scale and fine
Yes.
tune it. So it seems like you're benefiting from like what is essentially a large numbers opportunity that Facebook leads are, providing. They're an active person on the on platform, active person. They've registered. They've shown that level of intent to register, whether they're serious about whether they're a serious immediate lead or not. And because you have the ability to ingest so many more without having to manually make phone calls and manually reach out, uh, it sounds like that's really a great pairing. You have a great conversational or follow-up process, whether that's an ISA. For the people of the ISA model, some people use that to train new agents on just best practices. But I think that's a great way, as we're closing out and as we close out, to think about your business and think about what you're doing, sometimes with a different lens. So Facebook leads aren't people that don't care and are not ready to buy, or they just want to look at pretty pictures. That may be the case on, a certain level, but as you expand outwards and are able to process more people, you process more hay, you find more needles. Is that a
Mm,
fair statement?
that's it. That's 100% accurate. 100% accurate. And to a degree, real estate is a business where I have found innovation takes a few years. Usually innovation occurs in other spaces or in other industries first before it hits real estate. And this, however alien it may sound, it's something that is definitely worth putting the effort in to learn, because it has so many different facets to it that just help us improve the way in which we run our business. And eventually it's going to be taking up business models, but if we can adapt with it, it's designed in order to enhance our capacity. So having a little bit of that pioneer mindset, I think, is important.
I think so too, especially now. There are so many changes that are happening, as we speak right now. There are a number of things happening from the legislative side, from the legal aspect, but none of this is settled. So as we're coming up onto the top of the hour, uh, would just love to leave just a few words of advice, for everyone tuning in today. Uh, I think from our end is, stay testing, stay curious, uh, and be ready to shift your mindset as needed. Anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think coming from a place of contribution, collaboration, and really having that deep intent to help other people, put the time in to put your process and your systems in place. But don't lose sight of your goal isn't to make a buck. It's to help people improve their situations, and your what you'll receive in return is going to be far greater than just the dollar.
Awesome. And with that, thank you all for joining us today. And for those of you tuning in on YouTube, appreciate you spending some time with us today. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tim.